Elden Ring NightReign is a game that now exists in an age where teasers, announcements happen way before we tend to see a final product in this day and age of the gaming industry. When NightReign got shown off at the Game Awards, it blindsided myself and many others. But I think, judging, I'm sure you're seeing by the title of this video, that excitement that I initially felt when I saw the FromSoft logo and Bandai Namco show up, and I knew the stamp of approval we tend to get with those guys at the helm. That excitement quickly turned into concern and maybe a bit of apprehension the longer and the more I found out about the actual project. Because if you don't know, NightReign is essentially a standalone spin-off, which are two words I just don't like being put together, of the Elden Ring franchise, I guess it is now. And it's a departure from the norm, which in normal circumstances is something I would say is a benefit. But considering this isn't their main focus and it is not being helmed by Miyazaki, the mastermind behind Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3 and 1, and conveniently, and you can tell this by his expertise, not Dark Souls 2, which is the sort of the Black Swan middle child of the series. That does raise some concerns for me. And there was some interviews done, which obviously were released after embargo, sort of giving us a more in-depth look of what NightReign was going to be and what to expect. And I hear the words roguelike, and that's a format I probably would have been more excited for a few years ago. And now I think it's done to death. And I'm not going to sit here and be the most pessimistic person in the world, because you got to understand, on this channel and long-term viewers of this channel, people who have come over from my MMA channel will know I'm quite an optimistic person. And the main focus with this page was to focus on the games I love and why I love them. And I guess this is an extension of that, because Elden Ring, as I spoke about, even if I did critique it in my last video, was a game that I love. And Dark Souls and the Soulsborne Kiro franchise as a whole is something, I'm hugely passionate about. I think it changed the way we look at gaming as a whole. I stand by the first game, well, Dark Souls 1, not necessarily the first, is one of the most influential games ever made. And it was a pivotal sort of part of my life personally. So it does come from a place of love when I talk about maybe the problems or apprehensive feelings I have towards a project like NightReign. And, part of that with the roguelike genre is reusage of, redoing, retrying. That is the premise of those kind of games. And of course, that's almost a premise of the Soulsborne games in general. But I think it's a lot more prevalent, broadly speaking, in terms of NightReign. Because if you don't know, we heard from some of these interviews I just mentioned that you basically work in a co-op environment, and that's the point I'll get onto, over 3 days, which in a zone that shrinks smaller, and you basically have to challenge a boss at the end of it. And win or lose, you get to do the same thing again with a new randomly generated environment within the Lands Between, which is the world of Elden Ring, if you don't know. And you can sort of unlock things to help you in your next run over time, like a conventional roguelike. And there is cause for concern there, but I think the main thing is our random generation, those two words put together. And I'm all for reusing assets. I think in this age where games are more expensive to make, I think sometimes it is necessary, within reason. And I think that's the disclaimer I feel like I have to make there. FromSoft have always been pretty good at it. Elden Ring perhaps was a bit more egregious with it because of the scale of the game. They spread themselves a lot wider. The scope was a lot bigger. And of course, it was their first foray into an open world genre compared to their other games. So there were excuses there. I could understand some of the creative decisions behind reusing certain bosses and reusing certain areas and assets. And that's okay. But with something like NightReign, I'm not sure it's going to work well. And I'm curious to see how well it holds up in terms of an extended period of play. And I think it was a PC Gamer article I saw talk about it, where they were concerned that if it was just Limgrave as the early area being used for reusage, there might be some cause for concern in terms of replayability. And I think segueing on from that, the big talking point of the trailer was, of course, the return, even if it was just for a couple of seconds in the footage, of the Nameless King, which was, of course, was an infamous boss from Dark Souls 3. Really was the gold standard for difficulty at the time, probably less so now, with the bars been raised since. but of course is a recognizable figure. But I think that marks a really significant change, perhaps in FromSoft design philosophy, where we're really looking at fan service as more of a priority. And I think we saw elements of that in Shadow of the Erdtree, with Radahn being the final boss, which maybe some people disagreed with. I enjoyed it as a whole. But seeing a character, or a boss rather, I think a boss is probably the more important word to use here, being reused in a different game, in a different world. Of course, there aren't really any rules, and there, as a developers, they can do exactly whatever they want to do. But maybe it just speaks towards nostalgia baiting, and I really hope I'm wrong there. And I'm probably gonna go and enjoy it anyway. And I want to make that point while I'm talking here, is because I love this series to a T, and I will pick up NightReign on launch, because From Software are a studio that have one of the very few that have earned a sort of seal of approval in most. And when you see, as I said, FromSoft have their logo on something, you know it means it's going to be good quality. So I will be playing it on launch, and I will be excited, just probably with a little bit more concern than I would with a mainline title in their series, or new IP, for example, where they are going full steam ahead. Miyazaki is on board, and there's very few studios that really have that. CD Projekt Red are probably another, and that maybe is a topic for a different day, of course, with the announcement right next to it at the Game Awards of The Witcher 4. And that gets me very excited. Has got me all back into the world of The Witcher, and I'm sure I'll be talking about that on this channel very soon. But I think it's okay to critique something like this. You know, no studio is perfect. I mentioned in my last video, as much as I love Elden Ring, it's a game and its subsequent expansion that has issues and certain creative decisions that perhaps I didn't like. So maybe with this departure and change in approach to, you know, it's a new foray for them. Obviously, the open world experience was new for them. Now they're trying to hand out a roguelite, even if it's not their full mainline project. I'm going to go into it with an open mind, just a little bit apprehensive, and we'll see. I trust in From Software, and of course, I trust in the gamers, as much as I hate that word, to make their mind up as well. And I think you should too, when it comes out early next year. But I appreciate you being here. I'm going to try and make some more videos on this channel a little bit more. I really want to make my games channel the main focus this year, on top of my MMA channel, which of course is doing well, thanks to all of you who come over from over there. Of course, this is a place for me to really just wind down, talk about my personal experiences with the games, probably less so in this video in particular. But yeah, this is a new foray for me, as much as it is for From Software come their release. But I'm looking forward to a new chapter for 2025, and plenty more to come here. So I appreciate you, and I'll see you pretty soon.